Howdy readers, I'm Jason, this is Chapter and Verse, and this is the Tempest video number 2, in which I plan to talk with you a little bit about a few films, and some poetry and some fiction as well. So this here, okay, which you've seen in another video of mine, is Titus Andronicus, directed by Julie Taymor. Alright, this was her first feature film. Julie Taymor was a stage director before this. She's the one who brought The Lion King to Broadway. But she had also done a stage production of Titus Andronicus. And she decided to make that her first feature film. This came out, I don't know, 1999, I think. It's absolutely brilliant. It's the thing that really put Titus kind of on the map for me. I saw the film in the same year that I first read Titus in a Shakespeare class in college. And I just love it to pieces. Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Lange, Alan Cumming, Harry Lennox, Laura Fraser. But anyway, Julie Taymor then went on to make Frida, about Frida Kahlo. She made Across the Universe, which is a musical about the Beatles. I used to have that on DVD. I can't stand the Beatles, though, so I eventually got rid of it. I know I'm one of like 6 people in the world who can't stand the Beatles, but there it is. But anyway, after Across the Universe, she adapted The Tempest for the screen. And it's a good film. It's not a great film. She ran out of money, from what I understand. The film in post-production, it just needed a lot more kind of sunk into its special effects, into the details of her vision of the play on screen, and the studio just didn't kind of come through on their end, and you can see it at times. There are things about it that feel sparse or that feel cheaply done. But on the whole, it's really quite good. The revolutionary thing that she did was that she changed the role of Prospero into Prospera. And she cast Helen Mirren as the wizard. And Felicity Jones is Miranda. I have a massive crush on Felicity Jones. She's also one of my favorite actresses. It's not just a crush thing. But Jaimin Hunsu plays Caliban, and Ben Whishaw is Ariel. And it's quite good. It's not as good as Titus, but it's still wonderful. The best thing about this, though, is that we have this visionary stage and screen director, Julie Taymor, who has made 2 Shakespeare adaptations in her career, and they are these 2 plays. These 2 plays, which, as you now know, I think are in a richer dialogue with each other than any other 2 plays I can think of. So I find that really fascinating. And the fact that I'm really drawn to both of these plays and their themes, and how the Tempest kind of works as a response to Titus or as a corrective to Titus, makes me really kind of want to meet Julie Taymor someday. I'd love to just sit down and talk with her about these plays. Because clearly some of her preoccupations are some of my own preoccupations. And that's kind of cool. The next film that I wanted to share with you is this documentary called Shakespeare Behind Bars. And in a nutshell, this is about a Shakespeare instructor who begins an arts program in a maximum security prison, where he goes to the prison each year, and a number of the prisoners volunteer to take part in this setup that he has going, and they do a play each year. They do a Shakespeare play each year. The prisoners cast themselves. They go through the kind of acting lessons with him. In this instance, they spend the year working on The Tempest, and they use the play really as a vehicle to help them understand their own pasts, to help them understand why they did what they did. They don't try to explain away or excuse what they did, but they use the play to help them recognize that their crimes were the products of a long, knotted, complicated history and set of circumstances, and the theme of forgiveness in the play it's really beautiful how it's handled, because these are men who are in prison for rape, for murder, for armed robbery, and they haven't been able, in many cases, they haven't been able to forgive themselves. They haven't seen fit to even begin to look for a way to ask for forgiveness from the people and the families that they've wronged. And it's moving. It's really compelling stuff, actually. God, I've seen this probably half a dozen times. I've taught it. This is a documentary that I can't see myself ever parting with. So, Shakespeare Behind Bars. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on some of the literature, right? Some of the ways, some of the places where we see the Tempest manifesting itself in 20th century and 21st century literature. And the first example of this is in the work of Sylvia Plath. So Sylvia Plath was a poet, a great American poet, mid-20th century. She died at the age of 30 by her own hand. She died, I think, in February 1963. But anyhow, she lost her father at a very young age. And I can't remember if it was right before she lost her father, right after she lost her father. Her mother took her as a little girl to see a production of The Tempest. It must have been right after she lost her father. And anyway, through the rest of her life, she looked at the relationship between Prospero and Miranda as somehow kind of mirroring or echoing her own relationship with her father. Just as Prospero was this deeply learned wizard, her father was an expert in bumblebees. He was like the country's foremost expert in bumblebees. So she's got a poem in here called Full Fathom 5, in which she uses the kind of myth of Prospero and Miranda to dig into the relationship with her dad a little bit. And then this collection, right? This collection was published shortly after her suicide. She left the poems for this laid out on her desk in the order she wanted them published when she killed herself. Her husband, Ted Hughes, the very famous British poet, reordered the poems like the jerk he was, and published them in an order that he thought they should be in. And then later they were published according to her wishes. But the collection is called Ariel. And there's a poem in this called Ariel as well. And it's got multiple meanings. So Plath, if memory serves, Plath was taking horse riding lessons. And she rode a horse named Ariel. But she also, of course, was thinking of the Tempest in writing that poem. Yeah, the best, I've read three biographies of Sylvia Plath. And the best one I've read by far, it's one of my two favorite biographies of anybody, is it's called Rough Magic. And it's by Paul Alexander. And that, of course, comes from Prospero's speech, right? This rough magic I here abjure. So, so you find the Tempest, in studying Plath's life and work, you find the Tempest creeping in a lot of places. Another book I wanted to just briefly mention, I've read it, but it's been donkey's years since I've read it, and I really couldn't tell you squat about it. But this is W.H. Auden's The Sea and the Mirror. This is a long poem, and the whole thing is not the poem. The poem is, I'm not sure how long it is in here. But anyway, it's an unusual book, and this is for really, really only serious students of poetry. Mark, Words Everywhere, you would love this, I think. But it says, written in the midst of World War II, after its author emigrated to America, The Sea and the Mirror is not merely a great poem, but ranks as one of the most profound interpretations of Shakespeare's final play in the 20th century. As W.H. Auden told friends, it is, quote, really about the Christian conception of art, and it is my ars poetica, in the same way I believe The Tempest to be Shakespeare's. I should probably read it again, actually, seeing as I myself am of the view that The Tempest is a deeply religious play in many ways. That is a comment that will probably cost me 1 or 2 subscribers, is my guess. And then there's this here, right? This is Frederick Buechner's novel, The Storm, which I've read, I think, 3 times now. And it's a pretty strict retelling, novel retelling of the Tempest. It's set in late 20th century America, as well as in the Caribbean, I think. But it's quite good. It's really, really lovely. Yeah, I would recommend anybody read this. There are strong Christian echoes in this novel as well. Buechner, in addition to being a Pulitzer Prize finalist novelist, is a Presbyterian minister. And yeah, his fiction carries really strong, lovely, but subtle traces, I think, of his religious identity and his religious thought. So, but it's a great book. Really slim novel. Remainder mark there. And then lastly, and this is a book that I haven't read, and this just came out a few years ago, but it's part of that new Hogarth Shakespeare series where contemporary writers are retelling certain Shakespeare plays. So Howard Jacobson tackled The Merchant of Venice, and Joe Nesbo recently tackled Macbeth, I believe. But this is Margaret Atwood's retelling of The Tempest, and this is called Hag-Seed, in reference to Caliban. And again, I haven't read it. I've read and I've heard really, really good things about it. Have any of you watching this read this? And if you have, what did you think of it? I'd love to know. But yeah, I should probably read this sometime soon. Check that out. Like see the little boat there, and the waves are barbed wire. It's cool. I wonder what that means. Wonder what that implies. But anyhow, so those are just some examples of the Tempest kind of working its way into 20th century and 21st century literary and filmic culture. There are others, to be sure, other examples of that, but these are the ones that I'm most familiar with. Again, I hope you guys loved The Tempest as much as I do. If you know of any other kind of retellings or adaptations of it that I haven't mentioned here, please let me know those. I know there's Prospero's books, which I haven't seen in, God, it's been forever, but that is a crazy movie. I looked for that at the library today, so I could show you the DVD, but they didn't have it, which wasn't surprising since that's one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. I can't imagine it would play terribly well with the public in Casper, Wyoming. But anyhow, I hope you guys have a really wonderful rest of your weekend. And again, I look forward to seeing your Tempest videos tonight and tomorrow and over the next few days, probably. Sleep well, and I will see you very, very soon. Adios.